Good morning. I'm Norm Green from GemTalk Systems, and I'm giving the GemTalk update along with assistance from Professor James Foster, who will do the middle of the talk. I always enjoy coming to these conferences to see the academic side of the world. My son will start computer science as a freshman at university first year in the fall, and he and I were talking about what's the difference between doing computer science as academia or in the industry. And then he showed me this cartoon that kind of sums it up a little bit. He said, "Dad, is that correct?" And I said, "Mostly, yes, I think so." I'll give you, can you see the font? Is it big enough? Although it's more often, could you also fix the Wi-Fi, but yes. In any case, it's always good to get outside of industry and talk to people in academia at the conference. So part one is who is GemTalk and what do we do? More on the business side, we've been around now for 41 years, started in 1982 as Servio Logic. First version of GemStone shipped in 1986 when I was still in university. And the name changed from Servio Logic to GemStone in 1995. And then we went through some various acquisitions and mergers and things like that, acquired by Brocat in 2000, bought back by management in 2001, then acquired by VMware in 2010, and then sold by VMware in 2013 to our owner, Dan Ware, where it will remain forever. So. To take you through some of what our customers are and who are they and what do they do with GemStone. This is in the financial side. You may know some of these projects. JP Morgan Chase has been doing Capital since 1993 in trading, still in production. DBO in Zurich doing precious metal trading and back office settlement. DBO means distributed back office since 1990. ICE, Intercontinental Exchange, owns the New York Stock Exchange and has been using GemStone since 1994 in production. Momentum Wealth in South Africa, doing insurance holdings and portfolio management for their advanced customers since 1995. LifeWare, who is here with us today, it's been now 23 years using GemStone. Very proud of that. And Guava in Australia does banking applications based on GemStone since 1998. On the manufacturing side, Texas Instruments down in Texas has been using GemStone for semiconductor manufacturing, monitoring yields and such things since 1991. Onto, I thought it was Onto, but I was corrected, it's Onto. Does semiconductor manufacturing software since 1998. They actually purchased rights to the TI system and are allowed to resell it worldwide. So it's in fabs in Taiwan and Singapore and many places. HTS, who is also here with us, HVAC software since 2012. They have one of the largest GemStone databases in the world. H.B. Fuller, adhesives manufacturing in Minnesota since 1997. These customers are all in production. If they go off GemStone, we take them off, but very few have, so it's fortunate it's still a good list. Florida Power and Light has a system called TCMS2, which is probably being used very heavily this week with the hurricane approaching Florida. We staff that for them remotely to offer 24/7 support during storms. And some of my guys right now are on standby in 12-hour shifts just to be available in case something happens with the system when the hurricane hits. This system manages all the trouble calls for power outages. So you can imagine when a hurricane goes through, they get thousands and thousands of calls to report the power outage. And those generate tickets, and they send those tickets to the linemen, and the linemen go out and fix the power lines. So yes, we do provide remote administration and emergency on-call support to Florida Power and Light. On the telecom side, there's a system called Condus, which was created by Siemens Austria and has now been moved to a company called Atos for provisioning and telecom cable management. One of the main users of that is Telecom Argentina down in Buenos Aires. And SPL Tele in Germany has also been using us since 2013. On the government side, in Canada, the Border Security has a system written in GemStone. They can't tell us what it does. They would have to kill us, but it's very secret, but it has something to do with looking for people crossing the border with flagged passports, known smugglers, that kind of thing. The Norwegian Directorate of Immigration uses us for a similar thing to process visas in and out of Norway. And LEI, well, I think there's some people here, Dutch Agricultural Institute is a government entity to track, as I understand it, agricultural yields from across the Netherlands into a database to distribute it to their farmers so they know how much to grow year to year, things like that. And we have many partners in the small talk world and outside of the small talk world even. Some of these you'll recognize. Our support in the community, we've been to every ESUG for, I forget, probably at least 20 years now. There's been someone here. We're a platinum sponsor for that. We're a member of the Confero Consortium, an industrial member, and we support the FAST Small Talks Conference in Argentina as well. We usually send at least one person, if not more. This is our updated team photo. This was taken last January with a couple of people missing, photoshopped in. But this is everybody in the company, except for one person that I'll show you in a minute. The next generation, Kurt, is with us here for his first ESUG. Stand up for a second, Kurt. Kurt wrote me the best cover ever, basically saying he fell in love with small talk, and how could we not hire him after seeing that? But he is a very valuable addition to the company. He's learned a lot in his 3 or 4 years, and I would have 10 of him if I could find 9 more. So, excellent. Also, Andreas Valud is working for us in the summers while he works on his PhD. I think he's wrapping up his summer term with us now in probably 3 more weeks, and he goes back to Oregon State University where he's doing a PhD in math, my old job. Andreas knows a ridiculous amount about Intel Assembler. I think he has the entire manual memorized. So he's worked on our native code and improvements in the virtual machine for most of the time. And we'll talk about that a little further on, but the speed increases we're going to get in the next major version of GemStone are mostly thanks to Andreas. And our latest hire is Alyssa Friel, who joined us just last month. She's a computer science graduate from Portland State and is working under Kurt to learn the ins and outs of GemStone and Smalltalk, starting at the bottom, working out, but she seems very bright. We're very happy to have her, and hopefully she'll be a long-term addition to GemStone as well. So we're really trying to hire the next generation, so when guys like me retire someday, maybe, if ever, there's someone left to do the work. Okay, part 2, I will hand over to Professor Foster.
So often at the conference, we assume that everyone knows what we know and are lots of experience and tell you about some of the deep internals and things that we've done. But we're reminded periodically that there are new people. And so question is, how many have a good feel for what GemStone is? And many, okay. And how many have actually used it? So, well, about half, so very good. But we do want to provide intro so that you come away from a conference like this with, I know I'm trying to go backwards. How many did I skip? Okay, here we are. Okay, so the limitations of the traditional Smalltalk is your object space is limited to one virtual machine. Your object space is limited to one host. Your object space is limited to available RAM. And we've heard mention yesterday or earlier this week that some images are getting up to 1 gigabyte in size. Well, you know, that's very substantial for a Faro image, but if you're talking about a database, that's not really industrial size database. And then the changes that you made since the last image save will be lost if the VM quits. So these are some of the limitations of the traditional VM. So with GemStone, the object space is shared by thousands of virtual machines. The same object space, the same object IDs, the same data. The space is limited by disk, not by RAM. So as much disk as you put on. The object changes are managed through what's called ACID transactions. Atomic, either all or nothing. If we quit or crash in the middle of a transaction, then when we start up, we'll roll back those changes. So your debits and credits will always total. Consistent, isolated, durable. Consistent, again, the information will be the same before and after a crash. The isolated, when you're running and you look at objects, you see just your own view of the database. As other people make changes, it doesn't affect your view until you commit or abort, update. And then again, durable, so that changes made will be persisted even if you crash. Scalability, again, how much can it grow? Billions of objects. Right now, I believe it's a 40-bit number, so that's a trillion objects in theory. Thousands of users. We had, some predefined data structures that said 10,000, and one of our customers said, can you bump that up? So we went up to 32,000. Thousands of machines can share the same object space. Thousands of transactions per second. Again, pretty much limited by the hardware that you have available. On my laptop, if I'm doing just very trivial things, I can get, 100 transactions per second or more. And then terabytes of data. Again, just pretty much limited by disk. Concurrency. Multiple users interacting with the database at the same time. Multiple sessions. Again, the ACID transactions, but within each session you can do commit, abort, and change your view of the database. Concurrency, it can be managed either with optimistic concurrency or pessimistic. With the optimistic concurrency, you don't need to do any locking or anything else. You just go through, make your changes, and we will check to see if there's any conflicts on a commit. Then the pessimistic concurrency, if you want to be sure that you're going to avoid any errors or commit conflicts, you can obtain locks on individual objects saying, if anyone else tries to lock this object, their commit will fail. Mine will succeed. So again, we have that. Again, with concurrency namespaces. So you can set up names where this collection is visible to me but not to you, or individual objects. I can read them, but you can read and write them, but I can only read them. So security with that. Object level security, we were discussing there, can be user, group, or world. So much like operating system permissions, you can say people in this group have authority to edit or read these objects. Login is based on various types of security. The simplest is just putting user ID and password in the database, but we can coordinate with the operating system or a network authentication system such as Kerberos, LDAP, various other things that customers have requested to allow single sign-on or other types of authentication. Privileges can be assigned based on users, so someone has the authority to do backups, but other people don't. Changing passwords is an administrative privilege. All of this common things for other databases, but the thing with Smalltalk is it's objects all the way down. When you're doing database security, when you're setting permissions, when you're doing backups, it's message sends to objects. All of these things are just pure objects. Classes, methods, blocks, ANSI exceptions. We're following ANSI as far as we can tell all the way through. But there is some special things in GemStone to handle large collections. So you have arrays, ordered collections, sets that can have millions of objects in them. And we can provide indexes on those objects for rapid lookup. So if you have a collection and it's indexed, then you can find something with that ID, with that name. You can jump to a particular place in a list and get them sorted in order in millisecond response times. So large collections, indexing. Interfacing to other Smalltalks. So if you have a traditional GUI written in widgets on Visual Age or VA, VAST tools, I guess it's called, Toolkit, what is it called now? VAST platform, thank you, okay. I'll learn that eventually. So we can send objects to VAST platform and then they can present the data. And we have this for other Smalltalks as well, including Pharaoh and Jadeite work in Dolphin. Other languages, of course, everything's done through a C library, so C calls. One of my side projects is to see how many interfaces I can create for GemStone. So have one for Python, Ruby, Dart, and other things where just if they have an FFI, then you can wrap it and talk to GemStone. Interfaces to relational databases, Oracle, Postgres, Sybase. So there are tools that work in SQL that other people are familiar with, and it's a common thing of, oh, I need it to work with this. So we'll go ahead and support that. Platforms, Linux, both Intel, AMD, and then ARM. I run then on Apple, again with the Intel or the Apple Silicon CPU. So I'm running on my Mac the M1 Pro chip and run GemStone native compiled for that architecture. Solaris, IBM. Raspberry Pi is again ARM, and I have a Raspberry Pi that runs GemStone on it. Clients, all of the above plus Windows. GemBuilder for Smalltalk is a library that installs in your client Smalltalk and communicates with largely transparent object replication. That's the traditional way that people built applications. Many of the customers that you saw in Norm's list there are doing that. But the more modern approach might be just using GemStone as a web server. IDE, interacting with the tools, debuggers. Again, the GemBuilder for Smalltalk exists in the VAST platform and in VW, but there's a Jade IDE that's for Dolphin. And again, Dolphin runs on Windows. So the primary reason I keep a Windows virtual machine on my Mac is so that I can run Dolphin and Jade. Lots of tools for that, and you can see the link. A fork of Jade is Jadeite, and that's getting a new set of tools particularly focused on, let's see, I guess that was the system browser. Jadeite is getting the tools focused on package management, source code management, and a lot of work is being done in that area to provide you a rich set of package management, code management tools that are accessible directly from GemStone without having to use third-party tools that may be proprietary or expensive. So migration from other source code management systems. Licensing, free, as in beer. Any use, including commercial. We'll look at some of the terms there. Perpetual, buy once, own that version forever. The annual subscription, and then if you're running an outward-facing business, then talk to us about what that business is, and we can look at a royalty model. So if you're starting small, your royalties can be small as well. Here's the pricing and terms for the Community Edition. You can download GemStone, including through the Debian package manager that I showed on Monday. And it will start immediately with a free key that's included in the distribution. You don't have to, it's not behind any sort of wall or permission. It will run basic system. If you send us an email, we'll send you a key that gives you more cache, more gems, more disk, more database, and so on. And then pricing for more gems, more cores is increased there. So more cores, more cache. But again, by the time you need something that's 4 cores or 4 gig of RAM, you should have enough of a business to pay us a few $1,000s a year. Support, 24/7 for those who are doing that. Mailing list, we've got a mailing list for GemStone, and the staff monitor that, and as do some longtime friends and experts who will jump in with advice. So we'll let Norm then tell you what's coming next.
Now, sometimes people ask me, how do you manage your team? Do you use Scrum? Do you use Agile or any of the other buzzwords? None of the above, really. I came across this amusing cartoon the other night about Agile, I guess it is. Classic Dilbert. Okay, on to the server releases. Version 3.7 has taken longer to get out than we hoped. I would hope to be standing here saying it was available today, but the QA guys want about another week to do their thing on it. So the date I have right now is September 7th for this to go out. It's in final QA. If they don't find any other bugs, then we should be good to go. If they do, then, well, it'll take longer, but hopefully not. Then we'll probably do a follow-on version early next year, 3.7.1. On the version 3.6x line, which is our current supported production version, we shipped 3.6.6 back in May, and we'll probably do another bug fix release for that, probably late this year, around December, maybe 3.6.7, roughly December 2023. Just a review of kind of what was in 3.6. In 3.6, we added the encryption on disk option, so you can have all your tran logs, extends, basically everything, all your data encrypted on disk and decrypted when as needed when the database starts up. It's done with a private key, public key scheme. So you can have your private key and passphrase required to start up the database, and after that you don't need it until you restart the database again. We have a couple of customers that requested this, and we're not happy with just having the encrypted file system, because that's a different way to manage it. So we added native to GemStone. This is some code, command line code to create and start an encrypted database. It's basically the same as any other database. There's a few more flags and command line arguments to deal with the encryption. We also restricted perform on server. Perform on server is like calling out to the operating system to do something, and it used to be kind of wide open, and some customers said, well, we want to limit what commands people can execute to do that depending on their privileges and who they are, so we added that. And now you can give it a list of commands that are allowed for a given user profile on what they're allowed to run perform on server, so they can't do rm star or something like that. We added 4 new immediate or special classes in 3.6, small date and time, small scale decimal, and small time. These are objects that hold their value in the object, so they never take any disk space. Their value is held within the object ID. We added the ability to output GSList as in JSON format. GSList is a command on the command line to show you all the GemStone services running on a server. And you can now get that in JSON. Amazon CMK support. This is a scheme where you have some data, say, in GemStone, and an external customer wants to manage access to that data with their own key that's stored in the cloud someplace. So it's CM key, customer master key, or customer managed key, depending on which set of docs you look at. But basically, the key is out in the cloud somewhere. Just because you have the data in GemStone, you can't look at it unless the customer uses their private key to decrypt it for you. And so we built this in for a customer request. Okay, on to version 3.7. The main thing in 3.7 is performance. All of Andreas's good work will finally see the light of day, and we've tried to make everything we can faster: starting database, garbage collection, backup, restore, page reclaim, and of course the Smalltalk VM. We also added monitoring with an open source tool called Prometheus, which is used a lot in the Linux monitoring world. It's an open source cloud-based monitoring system that shows you kind of nice graphs, and if you can talk to their API, you can monitor almost anything with it, and you get nice charts like this that show you any GemStone statistic that you want, like commit record backlog, database size, number of users, things like that. You can put in this graph, and then there's all kinds of tools and external APIs built for Prometheus that people can use. I mentioned the faster Smalltalk VM thanks to Andreas. Average improvement of 30 to 35%, kind of depending on what you're doing. Small integer math got a lot faster. Some of the blocks ends got a lot faster. Some things, so it'll be different for everybody how much improvement is seen, but almost every GemStone application should see some improvement. It should always be faster, not slower. Also in 3.7, we extended the CMK support to include the Microsoft platform, Azure, so you can have customer managed keys out in the Microsoft cloud now, similar than the way that you do it for Amazon. The API in Smalltalk is very similar. We really try to keep it the same, so no matter which one you use, it's basically the same code. And we added something called fast instance migration. And instance migration is something you get into with GemStone that you don't with single image Smalltalks. So you create a new version of a class, you add an instvar, take away an instvar, whatever have you, and now you have 10 million objects out there that you need to migrate to be the new prototype of class that you've created. Well, how do you do that? I mean, there's tools in GemStone to do that, but you have to scan the entire database at least once. And if you have, say, 2 terabytes of data, even with SSDs and a lot of memory, that can take a while. So we added some optimizations to this so you could migrate up to 2,000 classes in a single operation, move them from version A to version B, and do it as quickly and as efficiently as possible. We upgraded our OpenSSL libraries from version 1 to version 3. I think SSL version 1 is going out of support this fall, I think in the next couple of months. So we had to get to version 3. We built all our own SSL libraries from source and shipped them with GemStone. We've added support for SSH and SFTP as well in 3.7. We have some new classes, GS SSH socket, so you can now execute remote commands over the SSH protocol to a remote server. And there's an SFTP support on that as well to manipulate remote files, get a file, list a remote directory, the normal things you can do with SFTP as a client. We don't have SFTP server support yet. That could be added if anybody needed it, but the main demand was for SFTP clients. We've done some work on the read stream classes. Read stream tends to be a very generic class where it doesn't really assume what it's reading is a stream of necessarily bytes, ASCII or Unicode and so on, but a lot of times that's what you're doing. You're parsing some text. So there is now a specialized class called read byte stream that's optimized for reading string and byte objects. And it can be quite a bit faster in some cases. We added auto promotion to Unicode 16 when a code point is greater than 255 is added to a string. Not doing that before was causing some issues with certain applications. So we added this auto promote rather. New cryptographic hash methods to play nicer with Faro. Recently discovered that when you do a SHA sum in Faro, you get back a byte array. We were returning either a large integer or a string representation, which is kind of what you get from the command line. You get a nice long hex string of the hash, and you go from there. But Faro wants a byte array, so we added the ability to do a byte array to all our hash methods, basically just add in the suffix bytes on it. So instead of SHA-256 sum, you do SHA-256 sum bytes, and you get a byte array. Thanks to Kurt, we now have native support for file system inside GemStone in 3.7. That was a lot of work. People have used the file system API in Faro. It's taken from there, so it's intended to be entirely compatible. Classes like file reference, file system, file locator, and so on. So you shouldn't have to load that into GemStone anymore. It should be there out of the box. We added some more features to GS Secure Socket. This is how applications use TLS sockets from GemStone. We added the ability to have pre-shared keys and anonymous TLS if your application allows that level of security. With anonymous TLS, you don't authenticate the other peer, but all the traffic is encrypted. So you don't necessarily know who you're talking to, but if anybody eavesdrops, they won't easily be able to see it. And there are some applications out there that wanted anonymous TLS because they knew who the other side was and didn't want to deal with certificates and private keys and all that stuff. There's also the pre-shared key where if both sides know the secret, they can talk. Some other applications needed that. So this is all done through OpenSSL. We just previously didn't have a way to do this from GemStone Smalltalk, and now we do. We added the ability to have customer-defined special objects in 3.7. And what this is basically we have up to 16 different classes that customers can use or define to get an immediate object where the value is encoded in the object ID and it never takes disk space. And we've shipped an example with 3.7 for currency as a way to do this. So you have 4 bits of currency ID of the 56 bits, which could tell you if it's euro, US dollars, Canadian dollars, yen, whatever. You can assign your own codes to that. And the 52-bit is the amount that can be represented back as a scaled decimal. So there's example code shipped in GemStone, which kind of shows you how to do this. There may be other ways to do this. We've tried to add the special classes we think people need, like small time, small date and time, things like that. So you don't create a lot of disk objects that have the same value. That can be an issue in GemStone. You know, you think about if date, time, midnight, 1970, how many millions of those do you really need? I mean, 1 should be enough, right? But out of the box, it doesn't do that. So this lets people create their own special classes and define behavior for them. And there's an example how to do this. Brand new feature, but the example works. There may be more to do here, but I'm hoping this helps. Another thing in 3.7 is one-time passwords. Sometimes you need to log in as an administrator or an elevated password, but just one time to do something. A lot of customers have that need. Can also be called a break glass operation. So I just need elevated privilege to just log in once. And there's protocols where if I give you that password, then I have to change it later. I'm not allowed to do that. So customers asked us, well, can you just give a feature so that allows one-time login as a user profile and make it expire after a certain amount of time. And then after that, if you use the same password, it'll fail. The Rowan Package Manager is inside GemStone 3.7 in a preview kind of format. It's not ready for prime time yet, but if you're interested in that, talk to Dale. He's here somewhere. The goal is to get that into a future release 3.7.1 or 3.8. That'll be fully ready for prime time. It's definitely making a lot of progress, but we're not quite there yet on that. But it can be used with a little hand holding from Dale if you want to go there. In 3.7.1, we are going to do native code support for the ARM64. Right now in 3.7, it's interpreter mode only. We intended to have the native done, but it just wasn't quite ready. And Andres is counting down his weeks before he has to go back to university, but he told me he'd have it done before he leaves. So we will have that in the next version. For those that are interested in running GemStone on the ARM64 platform, I know there's a few people have asked about that. And he's also making more improvements in the x86-64 VM, because when he sees something in ARM, he goes back and says, oh, I wonder if I can do that in Intel, and does it there. So, and of course, lots of bug fixes. Beyond 3.7, this is very hand-wavy stuff at the point. There's no firm plan yet, but what we're working on is, like I mentioned, native Rowan support out of the box, hopefully in 3.8. Martin McClure's project, Sparkle, we hope to have ready for prime time in the near future. Martin couldn't be here. He planning to come, but he couldn't travel. So I was going to point to his talk, but I can't do that now. But there is a YouTube talk he gave about a year ago for the UK Smalltalk user group, which goes into great detail on Sparkle and what it is. It's basically a GemStone connection from Pharo, but not GemBuilder for Smalltalk, and that doesn't support full object replication and so on. But it supports debuggers and inspectors and executing a string, getting a string back, and doing the things that most people want to do. New open source projects. This one is fairly new. Jadeite for Pharo is porting some of the Rowan package manager code into Pharo to talk to GemStone. Also work in progress. Talk to Dale. I haven't actually loaded it yet, so I haven't played with it, but it's coming. Also relatively new, the GemConnect for Postgres is open source up on GitHub, and GemConnect for RabbitMQ is up on GitHub. And there's a gentleman in Germany I know at least using both of these in production. And that is my talk. Are there any questions? Yeah, Mariano.
Yeah, I was thinking probably Andres already thought about this, but since performance is very important for GemStone, did you consider doing parts of the VM with SIMD instructions, or is that somewhere in your roadmap to take advantage of SIMD?
Yeah, he's done some of that, the SIMD instructions. One thing we did is, and I didn't mention this in my slides, but we used the GCC compiler flags to require a modern version of an Intel processor now to run GemStone. So if you're running on a 486 as a 3.7, you're out of luck. Before that, we used the generic compile, so you just use a very base set of Intel instructions. So it should run on almost any processor. We've tightened that up. So that's going to use more of the SIMD instructions. I don't know if he's doing it in the native code generation yet. I'm sure Andres is aware of it because, like I said, he has an insane knowledge of the Intel instruction set. But it's a good question. Okay, thank you.